They tell you God keeps score. 3 strikes and you're out. Miss once, learn a lesson. Miss twice, feel the weight. Miss 3 times, start praying harder. But nobody talks about the 4th time, the one where even faith feels quiet, the one where you did everything right, showed up again, believed again, and still watched it slip through your fingers. That's the moment people don't clap for. That's the moment they stop giving speeches and start giving distance. They say maybe it wasn't meant for you. Maybe the message is to stop trying. Funny how quickly trust God turns into know your place. Because missing the 4th time doesn't just test patience, it messes with identity. It makes you question whether persistence is devotion or delusion, whether hope is courage or just a bad habit you can't quit. You start replaying every move, every prayer, every step, wondering if you misunderstood the instructions, if you heard the call wrong, if you were arrogant enough to think the universe owed you a different ending. And the silence after that miss is louder than any failure before it. It's not dramatic. It's calm, almost polite, like the world is waiting to see what you do when even belief feels embarrassed. That's where things get interesting, because most people don't break at the first loss or the second or even the third. They break when the pattern starts to feel personal, when the story they told themselves about purpose starts cracking, when the scoreboard doesn't match the effort. Missing the 4th time feels like a verdict, like a quiet sentence passed without explanation. And that's exactly why it matters. Because if you're still standing there, still breathing, still angry, still curious, still unwilling to walk away, then maybe the miss wasn't a rejection, maybe it was a question. Not about faith, not about worth, but about how much of you is left when the reward is gone and all that remains is the decision to continue anyway. The 4th miss feels personal in a way the others never did. The first time, you shrug it off, bad timing, inexperience. You tell yourself it's part of the process. The second time stings more, but it still feels negotiable. You adjust, recalibrate, convince yourself you're learning something useful. The third time hurts enough to make you question your approach, but there's still a narrative that keeps you moving forward. Growth takes time. Faith gets tested. Champions are forged in failure. All very poetic, all very survivable. But the 4th time doesn't feel like a lesson anymore. It feels like a message with your name on it. By the 4th miss, coincidence stops being comforting. Patterns start forming whether you want them to or not. You replay the moments leading up to it, not casually, but obsessively. Every choice feels heavier in hindsight. Every small mistake grows teeth. And the worst part isn't the failure itself, it's how quiet everything becomes afterward. No dramatic collapse, no thunder, just silence. A clean, unsettling silence that makes you wonder if the universe is done negotiating with you. Like it's folded its arms and decided to wait you out. People around you start reacting differently too. Their encouragement changes tone. It becomes softer, slower, cautious. They stop asking when you'll try again and start asking if you're okay. That's when you know something shifted. The 4th miss doesn't just challenge your confidence, it changes how others perceive your persistence. What once looked like dedication now starts looking excessive. What once felt admirable begins to look uncomfortable. They don't say it directly, but you can feel it. Maybe this is where you stop, and that's what makes it feel personal. It's no longer just about the outcome, it's about identity. About whether the story you've been telling yourself still holds up under pressure. You start questioning not just your strategy, but your character. Are you resilient or are you stubborn? Are you faithful or are you blind? Are you committed or just afraid to admit defeat? The 4th miss forces those questions into the open, and none of them have easy answers. They sit there, unresolved, poking at the parts of you that were built on certainty. There's also anger, but it's a complicated kind. Not explosive, not theatrical. It's quiet, restrained, almost polite. You don't want to be angry at God or fate or life, so the anger turns inward. You blame yourself for believing too hard, hoping too long, wanting too much. You replay every prayer, every intention, wondering if you misunderstood the rules of the game. Maybe you were arrogant to assume effort mattered. Maybe consistency doesn't mean anything. Maybe the universe doesn't reward persistence the way motivational quotes promised. What really unsettles people is that the fourth miss removes excuses. By now, you've worked harder than most would. You've shown up when quitting would have been reasonable. You've endured embarrassment, doubt, and fatigue. So when it still doesn't work, you're left without a clean explanation. And humans hate unexplained effort. They need cause and effect. They need morality baked into outcomes. The fourth miss violates that expectation. It suggests that effort and reward are not always linked, and that idea terrifies people who rely on fairness to make sense of suffering. Inside you, something fractures slightly, not enough to break, but enough to let new thoughts in, dangerous thoughts. Thoughts like, what if this isn't about success at all? What if the point was to see how much rejection I could absorb without changing who I am? What if the miss isn't punishment but pressure? Pressure to strip away ego, expectation, even hope itself, until all that remains is a raw decision to continue or not. And that decision becomes heavier than any outcome you were chasing. The fourth miss isolates you in a way the others didn't. Fewer people understand why you're still standing there. Fewer people are willing to listen to your reasons. They've moved on emotionally, even if you haven't. You start carrying the weight alone, and solitude has a way of clarifying things brutally. In that quiet space, without applause or reassurance, you find out what actually drives you. Not ambition, not validation, something deeper, something darker, a refusal to let a pattern dictate your worth. And that's why the fourth miss feels personal, because it strips away the audience, the encouragement, the safety net of optimism, and leaves you face to face with yourself. No slogans, no guarantees, just the uncomfortable realization that if you continue, it won't be because you're promised a reward. It will be because walking away would mean accepting a version of yourself you don't recognize. Silence after effort is the real test, because noise at least tells you where you stand. Failure with calm. Mentoring still feels negotiable. Someone explains it, someone critiques it, someone argues about it. But silence is different. Silence doesn't explain itself. It doesn't justify. It doesn't comfort. It just sits there, staring back at you, daring you to make sense of it on your own. After you've poured everything in, after you've shown up again and again, silence feels like being ignored by something that was supposed to be watching. You expect resistance, you expect obstacles, you even expect rejection. Those things make sense. They're part of the story. They give you something to push against. But silence offers no leverage. It doesn't tell you if you were close or far off. It doesn't tell you if you misunderstood the assignment or if the assignment was never meant for you. It just removes feedback entirely. And humans are not built for that. We are wired to interpret signals, to read reactions, to adjust. Silence breaks that system. It leaves you alone with your interpretation, and that's where things start getting dangerous. Because in silence, imagination takes over. You start filling in the gaps with your worst theories. Maybe you weren't good enough. Maybe you waited too long. Maybe you tried too hard. Maybe effort itself was the mistake. Silence doesn't correct those thoughts. It lets them roam freely, and the longer the quiet lasts, the more convincing they become. Not because they're true, but because they're unanswered. Silence has a way of giving doubt a microphone and telling it to speak uninterrupted. People don't talk about how humiliating silence can feel. You did the work, you took the risk, you exposed yourself to failure, and then nothing, no response, no acknowledgement, no clear direction. It feels like being left unread by the universe, and that kind of indifference cuts deeper than criticism ever could. Criticism at least acknowledges your existence. Silence makes you question whether you mattered at all. What's worse is how silence reframes effort. When there's no immediate outcome, no recognition, no visible progress, effort starts to feel naive, almost childish, like you believed in a story that wasn't real. You start hearing voices not from others but from inside yourself, asking when belief turns into delusion, asking how long persistence is noble before it becomes embarrassing. Silence doesn't answer those questions. It lets them echo. The people around you notice the silence too. They don't know what to say, so they say nothing, or they say something vague. Give it time. Everything happens for a reason. Empty phrases meant to fill the gap but never quite reaching the depth of what you're experiencing. Their discomfort adds another layer to the quiet. You realize they don't know how to sit with unresolved effort. They need outcomes to stay engaged. Without results, they slowly drift away, leaving you with your thoughts and the sound of your own breathing. And that's when silence becomes the real test. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's subtle. It doesn't challenge you openly. It waits. It watches. It asks one simple question without words. Will you continue without applause? Will you continue without reassurance? Will you continue when even faith feels like it's being ignored? Because anyone can move forward when the path is lit and the crowd is cheering. But silence strips the path bare. It removes the signs. It leaves you with nothing but the choice to take another step or not. Silence also exposes motive. When no one is watching, when nothing seems to be happening, the reason you started gets interrogated. If your motivation was recognition, silence suffocates it. If it was validation, silence starves it. Only the deepest reasons survive prolonged quiet. Only the reasons that do. And depend on reaction, reward, or reassurance. Silence is a filter. It eliminates the shallow motives and forces the real ones to reveal themselves, whether you like them or not. There's a cruelty in that process, but also clarity. In silence, you learn how much of your drive was external. You learn how attached you were to outcomes you couldn't control. And you learn whether your identity is tied to results or to action itself. Silence doesn't tell you if you're right or wrong. It tells you whether you're willing to keep going without knowing. That uncertainty is unbearable for most people. That's why so many stop there. Not because they failed, but because the quiet convinced them they were invisible. But if you stay, if you keep moving in that silence, something shifts internally. You stop waiting for permission. You stop waiting for signs. You stop waiting for noise. The effort becomes its own justification. The action becomes self-contained. And the silence, which once felt like abandonment, starts to feel like space. Empty, unsettling space where something new can form, where motivation is no longer borrowed from applause but generated from within, where the absence of response stops being a verdict and starts being a canvas. Faith gets uncomfortable when results don't show, because belief is easy when it's being rewarded. When things line up, when progress is visible, when effort produces something you can point to, faith feels rational. It feels justified. It feels almost intelligent. But strip the results away, and suddenly belief feels awkward, exposed, even embarrassing. You start wondering if you misunderstood the agreement, if faith was supposed to be transactional, if patience had an expiration date nobody told you about. At first, you reassure yourself. You tell yourself this is how it works. Delays happen, tests exist for a reason. You double down. You pray harder, focus sharper, clean up your intentions. You convince yourself that discomfort is just part of the process, that growth lives in the waiting. And for a while that story holds. It keeps you steady, it keeps you moving. But when the results still don't show, when the waiting stretches past what feels reasonable, faith starts to lose its polish. That's when belief becomes inconvenient. It no longer fits neatly into conversations. People stop asking how it's going, or they ask in a way that already assumes the answer. They tilt their heads, soften their voices. Faith without evidence makes people nervous. It disrupts their need for cause and effect. They want to see the proof. They want outcomes they can understand. And when you don't have those, belief starts to look like denial. Optimism starts to look like avoidance. Persistence starts to look like stubbornness. Inside you, the discomfort grows quietly, not as panic, but as tension. A constant low-grade pressure that sits behind every thought. You replay your assumptions. You question your interpretation. You wonder if faith is supposed to feel this lonely. Nobody tells you that belief can isolate you. Nobody tells you that trusting without confirmation feels less like courage and more like standing in a room where everyone else has already left. What makes it worse is that faith doesn't come with clear metrics. There's no progress bar, no confirmation message, no subtle nod from the universe saying you're on the right track. You're just there, showing up, believing into empty space. And the longer the space stays empty, the louder the questions get. Not angry questions, honest ones. Questions that don't attack belief but interrogate it. Questions that make you uncomfortable because they don't have clean answers. You start to notice how conditional most faith actually is. How often belief is cerebra, only when it pays off. How quickly people credit strategy when things work and dismiss faith as coincidence. Faith is praised in hindsight, not in the middle. Nobody claps for belief that hasn't been validated yet. Nobody lines up to support trust that hasn't proven itself. So when results don't show, you're left carrying something heavy without witnesses. There's also a quiet resentment that creeps in. Not toward God, not outwardly at least, but toward the idea that effort should matter, that sincerity should count for something. You don't voice it because it feels dangerous, almost blasphemous. So you swallow it, you smile, you keep saying the right things. But internally, belief starts to feel like a risk rather than a refuge. Something that costs you socially, emotionally, psychologically. And that's where faith becomes uncomfortable enough to change you. Because once belief stops being supported by outcomes, it stops being decorative. It becomes raw. It loses its slogans. It sheds its certainty. You're no longer believing because it's inspiring or because it feels good. You're believing because letting go would collapse something fundamental inside you. Faith turns from confidence into endurance. People misunderstand this stage. They think doubt has arrived, but it's not doubt, it's exposure. Faith without results removes all the padding. There's no reward to lean on, no reassurance to hide behind. Just you and the decision to keep trusting something you can't see, can't measure, can't explain to others without sounding foolish. And that foolishness is the price. That's the toll nobody warns you about. You start realizing that faith isn't meant to be comfortable. Comfort comes from control, and faith exists where control ends. When results don't show, belief forces you to confront why you believed in the first place. Was it for the outcome, or was it for alignment? Was it for the reward, or was it because walking without belief felt emptier than waiting with it? These questions don't resolve neatly. They sit with you, they reshape you. And somewhere in that discomfort, something subtle happens. Your belief stops being performative. You stop explaining it. You stop defending it. You stop needing others to understand. Faith becomes quieter, heavier, more private, less about hope, more about resolve, less about expectation, more about commitment. And while the world might read that silence as uncertainty, internally it becomes something else entirely. A decision to stand in the absence of results without turning belief into a condition, without bargaining, without needing proof to justify staying where you are. Persistence starts to look like madness the moment it stops being convenient. When you keep going past the point where applause fades, where encouragement dries up, where even the people who once believed start glancing at you like they're checking for cracks. At first, persistence is praised. It's called grit, resilience, discipline. But that praise has a time limit. Once you cross it, the label changes. Now it's obsession. Now it's denial. Now it's that uncomfortable thing people don't quite know how to talk about without lowering their voice. The world likes effort with expiration dates. Try hard, but not too long. Believe, but not after repeated disappointment. Keep faith, but only while it looks sensible from the outside. Persistence that overstays its welcome makes people nervous because it refuses to follow the script. It doesn't know when to bow out gracefully. It doesn't understand social cues. It just keeps showing up, and that's unsettling. Not because it's wrong, but because it exposes how conditional most commitment really is. You can see it in their faces, the subtle shift, the supportive smiles and cautious. Advice turns indirect. They stop saying you've got this and start saying whatever you decide is fine, which is another way of saying they've already decided for you. They've quietly marked the point where they would have stopped, and every step you take beyond that feels like an accusation. Your persistence becomes a mirror, and people don't like what it reflects back at them. What they don't understand is that persistence isn't always loud or hopeful. Sometimes it's exhausted, sometimes it's mechanical, sometimes it's just muscle memory refusing to shut down. You're not driven by optimism anymore. You're driven by refusal to let unfinished effort define you, refusal to accept that walking away automatically means wisdom. Persistence at this stage isn't pretty. It's not motivational poster material. It's raw, stripped of romance, fueled by something darker and more honest. This is where the madness label starts to stick. Because from the outside it looks irrational. The numbers don't add up. The pattern doesn't look promising. The results aren't improving fast enough. And in a world obsessed with efficiency, persistence without immediate payoff looks like a waste. People don't ask what it's costing you internally to stop. They only measure what it's costing you to continue. They don't see the weight of surrender. They only see the stubbornness of endurance. And the irony is that the same people calling it madness often admire persistence in retrospect. Once it works, once it pays off, once there's a neat arc they can point to and say, see, that's why you never give up. They sanitize it. They edit out the uncomfortable middle. They erase the version of you that kept going when it didn't make sense. Because that version threatens the idea that success is always logical, always well-timed, always socially approved. Inside your own head, it gets messy too. You start asking yourself the same questions they're asking, just quieter. Am I pushing forward because I should, or because I'm afraid to admit defeat? Am I committed, or just attached? Those questions don't have clean answers, and the lack of answers is what makes persistence feel unhinged at times. You're moving without certainty, acting without confirmation, choosing without guarantees. That's not madness, but it feels close enough that people confuse the two. Persistence also strips away performance. You stop explaining yourself because explanations require energy you don't have. You stop defending your reasons because they won't make sense to someone who already quit in their head. Silence replaces justification, and silence paired with continued action looks threatening. People prefer noise. They prefer arguments they can engage with. Quiet persistence offers nothing to debate. It just exists, steady and unapologetic. There's a loneliness to this stage that doesn't get talked about. The crowd thins out. The messages slow down. You realize how many relationships were tied to momentum rather than commitment. Persistence isolates you, not because you're better, but because you're willing to tolerate uncertainty longer than most. And tolerance for uncertainty is mistaken for insanity in a culture addicted to clarity. But here's the part that never makes it into polite conversation. Persistence that looks like madness is often the only kind that changes anything. Not the kind that's applauded, not the kind that's supported, the kind that survives skepticism, boredom, discomfort, and misunderstanding, the kind that doesn't rely on being understood, the kind that keeps moving even when the internal narrative collapses and all that is left is action. Because once you've gone far enough, stopping isn't neutral. It's not rest. It's not wisdom. It's a decision with consequences. You already understand too well. Persistence becomes less about reaching a destination and more about refusing to let doubt have the final word. And when you reach that point, whether people call it madness or not, stops mattering, because the only alternative feels like betraying something you can quite explain, but know you can't abandon doubt, hides behind. Maybe it wasn't meant for you because it sounds gentle enough to slip past your defenses. It doesn't attack you outright. It doesn't say you're weak or incapable. It pretends to care. It lowers its voice, softens its edges, and delivers the message like it's doing you a favor. Maybe this isn't your path. Maybe this isn't your time. Maybe you should stop forcing it. And that's what makes it dangerous. It feels compassionate while it dismantles you piece by piece. People love that phrase because it removes responsibility. If it wasn't meant for you, then no one has to explain why it didn't work. No one has to sit with the discomfort of effort without reward. No one has to admit they quit too early or misjudged you or misunderstood what commitment actually costs. Not meant for you wraps uncertainty in destiny and calls it wisdom. It gives doubt a spiritual accent and lets it walk around unquestioned. You hear it most often after you've already endured more than most would. After the third miss, after the fourth, after you've done everything that was asked of you and then some. That's when the phrase shows up, not at the beginning, not before the effort, but right when quitting would hurt the most. Right when stopping would feel like relief and betrayal at the same time. Doubt knows timing. It waits until you're tired, until you're isolated, until your certainty has been worn thin by silence. What's clever about it is how reasonable it sounds. It doesn't challenge your work ethic. It doesn't deny your sincerity. It simply reframes the failure as cosmic redirection, as if the universe has opinions about you personally, as if it sat down, reviewed your effort, and politely declined. And once you accept that framing, doubt wins without resistance. Because arguing with destiny feels arrogant, pushing back feels disrespectful. So you hesitate, you soften, you start considering the exit. But maybe it wasn't meant for you rarely comes from clarity. It comes from discomfort. From people who don't know how to sit with unresolved effort, from people who need clean narratives to stay emotionally stable. They can't tolerate ambiguity, so they spiritualize it. They can't tolerate endurance, so they call it attachment. And they can't tolerate watching you keep going, because it reminds them of the places they stopped and never returned to. The phrase also preys on your humility, on your willingness to question yourself. You don't want to be arrogant. You don't want to force something that isn't right. You don't want to be blind to signs. So you listen. You replay it in your head. You ask yourself if you're misreading the situation. And doubt loves that loop. It thrives in self-reflection without resolution. It convinces you that stepping back is maturity. even when stepping back costs you something essential. What nobody tells you is that destiny has terrible communication skills. If everything that doesn't work immediately wasn't meant, nothing meaningful would ever exist. Most things that matter look wrong before they look right. They resist, they misalign, they push back. And doubt knows this, but it also knows humans crave meaning. So it offers you an interpretation that feels bigger than fear, when really it's just fear wearing a ceremonial robe. You'll notice how quickly maybe it wasn't meant for you. Ends conversations. It shuts things down. There's no follow-up, no exploration, no curiosity. It's a full stop disguised as insight, and anyone who says it rarely sticks around to see what happens next. They deliver the line and move on, emotionally absolved. You're left holding the weight of that suggestion, wondering if continuing means you're defying something sacred rather than something scared. Inside you, the conflict sharpens. Part of you wants to believe it because believing it would make stopping easier. It would give you a story to tell that doesn't feel like failure. It would give you cover. But another part of you resists, quietly, stubbornly, because something about that phrase feels incomplete. It doesn't account for growth. It doesn't account for endurance. It doesn't account for the possibility that meaning isn't revealed before the struggle, but forged inside it. Doubt never says, "I'm afraid you'll get hurt again." It never says, "I don't know how this ends." It never admits uncertainty. It just hides behind destiny and lets you do the surrendering yourself. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake that surrender for peace. You'll call it acceptance. You'll tell yourself you're letting go, but deep down you'll feel the difference between release and retreat. Because the truth is, not meant for you is often just another way of saying, this is taking longer than I'm comfortable with, longer than society approves, longer than patience is applauded, longer than belief feels safe. And if you listen closely, you'll hear doubt hoping you stop, not because you're wrong, but because continuing would force a question no one wants to answer yet. A question about whether meaning is discovered or chosen, whether destiny is handed down or carved out, whether persistence is ignorance or devotion, whether the voice telling you to quit is divine guidance or just fear asking for a dignified exit. Oh, isn't this a fun little ride? We spend our lives running around, chasing after this and that, drowning in noise and chaos like we're on some kind of treadmill that we can't escape. We're so caught up in all the distractions, all the things that tell us where to go, what to do, what to wear, who to love, who to hate. We've got a million voices in our heads, pushing and pulling us, making us feel like we're losing control, like we're missing something. Isn't it funny how we're always running away from the silence, running away from the stillness, always busy, always on the move, always scrambling for something we can't even see. It's like we've made this big, elaborate game of hide and seek with ourselves. And the worst part, we're always the ones hiding. Why do we run from silence? Because it's uncomfortable, right? We can't stand it. We're so addicted to the noise, to the distraction. Our lives are full of constant clamor, constant movement. The phone buzzes, the TV's on, music's playing, people are talking. It's all a blur of noise. And we just keep pushing ourselves deeper into it. But what if the silence isn't the enemy? What if, just maybe, the silence is the one thing that can save us? You see, there's a reason why we run from it, isn't there? We're afraid of what we might hear if we just sit with ourselves for a second. We're terrified of the possibility that in that silence, we might hear something we don't want to hear. Something that might mess with the comfortable little story we've built for ourselves. It's like we know that in the quiet, maybe it's a voice or a thought or an idea that's been trying to break through. But we don't want to listen, do we? We don't want to hear what's been waiting to get through, because then we might have to actually do something about it. And that, my friend, is a real problem. See, the truth is, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is constantly trying to get our attention. It's sending signals, throwing up red flags, giving us signs. We just choose to ignore them. We're too busy with our own little plans, too busy running around in circles, trying to outrun the things that are meant to guide us. But those signals don't go away no matter how fast we run. They keep coming back again and again like a bad joke that just won't end. You can't run forever. It's exhausting, isn't it? Always looking for something, always searching for answers, always chasing the next big thing, the next rush. But the truth is, you're not going to find it in the noise. You won't find it in the distractions. So what's the deal with all this silence? Well, what if I told you that's where the answers are? What if I told you that the very thing you've been avoiding, just sitting with yourself, just being still for a second, could actually be the thing that finally gives you the clarity you've been seeking? It's in that silence, in that moment of nothingness, where the truth begins to speak. And when it does, it doesn't shout. No, it whispers. It whispers to you through the stillness, through the quiet moments, through the times you thought you'd never hear anything. But you won't hear it if you keep drowning it out with noise. And maybe, just maybe, the reason we run from the silence is because we know deep down that when we stop, when we finally let go of the distractions, we'll have to face the truth. We'll have to face the fact that we've been ignoring the signals, avoiding the signs. We'll have to face the fact that the answers have been right there all along. It's terrifying, right? The idea that everything you've been looking for was always just beyond the noise, always just beyond the chaos. But it's true. The answers are simple. They're not hidden in the hustle or the frantic energy of life. No, they're right there in the quiet. So stop, just stop. Stop the rush, stop the noise, stop running from yourself. Listen to the silence. It's not there to hurt you, to bring you down, to scare you. It's there to show you something, to give you the clarity you've been too afraid to face. It's in that space, in that moment of stillness, where you'll hear what you need to hear. And yeah, it might be uncomfortable at first. It might make you squirm a little, but trust me, that discomfort, it's the sign you've been waiting for. It's the sign that you're finally ready to listen. It's the sign that you're ready to let go of the noise and face the truth. So stop running. The silence is your chance to hear what you've been missing. You just have to stop long enough to listen. You think you're in control, right? You've got it all figured out, making decisions, calling the shots, taking charge. You've got this illusion that you're steering the ship, keeping it all together. But what if I told you that in all your so-called control, you're actually not the one driving? What if the wheel's been in someone or something else's hands the whole time? Yeah, that's a fun thought, isn't it? Makes you feel a little small, doesn't it? See, we spend our lives trying to figure out the formula for success, don't we? We follow the steps, chase the dream, do everything the right way. We're told, just work hard, be good, play by the rules, and everything will fall into place. But what if I told you that sometimes the only way forward is through the mess? What if I told you that there's a reason you're stuck, a reason things keep falling apart, a reason you keep hitting roadblock after roadblock. And it's not because you're doing something wrong. No, it's not that simple. Here's the thing. Sometimes life has to break you, doesn't it? Sometimes you have to get knocked down. Sometimes you have to get pushed to the edge, to the absolute brink of your sanity, just to see the truth. And let me tell you, that truth, it's not some easy, nice little package. It's ugly, it's raw, it's messy as hell. But guess what? That's when the magic happens. That's when everything you thought you knew about control, about life, about yourself, shatters. And in the broken pieces, that's where you find what you've been missing all along. You think you know what's best for you, but what if everything you've been planning, everything you've been working for, is just smoke and mirrors? What if you've been so busy following your own plan that you've missed the one that's been laid out for you? See, when life's going the way we want it, everything's great, right? The job's perfect, the relationship's perfect, the world's smiling at us. But when things go wrong, oh, that's a different story. Suddenly we're in a panic. We're scrambling, wondering why things are falling apart. We question everything, blame ourselves, curse the universe for throwing us off course. But here's the kicker. Maybe, just maybe, those failures, those setbacks, those roadblocks, they're part of the plan. Maybe they're not here to punish you. Maybe they're here to set you on the right track, to push you towards something bigger than what you've been clinging to so desperately. It's easy to get caught up in the small stuff, right? The day-to-day grind, the constant hustle, the endless pursuit of success and validation. It feels good to have that control. But what happens when that control slips away? What happens when life stops following the script? You freak out, don't you? You panic. You feel lost, like you've got nothing left. You wonder if the whole thing is just a cruel joke. But here's the part no one tells you. The very fact that things are falling apart is the reason why you're exactly where you need to be. You're just too busy trying to hold it together to see it. And when you finally let go of that control, when you stop fighting the storm, that's when everything starts to make sense. And don't get me wrong, it's terrifying. It's terrifying to give up control, to accept that you can't dictate everything that happens to you. It's terrifying to trust in something you can't see, to follow a path that doesn't have a map. But you know what's even more terrifying? Living a life where you're constantly fighting against the tide, trying to force things to happen on your terms. The exhaustion, the frustration, the burnout. Can you feel it? It's eating you alive, isn't it? So, what's the alternative? To keep swimming upstream, fighting the current, or to let go and see where the river takes you? You think the road to success is paved with straight lines, right? You think it's all about making the right moves, taking the right steps. But let me tell you something. Success isn't a straight line. It's not a neat little graph where you climb steadily upwards. No, success is messy. It's a twist, a turn, a fall, a climb, a slip. It's unpredictable. And that's what makes it beautiful. That's what makes it worth it. Because in those moments where you think you're lost, that's when the real growth happens. That's when the real lessons hit. And that's when you start to realize that maybe, just maybe, the plan you've been following isn't the plan you're meant to be on. Life's a dance, isn't it? You think you're leading, but maybe it's time to let go and let the rhythm guide you. Maybe it's time to stop controlling every little step and just move with the music. Because here's the truth, when you stop trying to control everything, when you stop fighting against the flow, that's when life starts working for you. That's when you finally start living. So Stop fighting the chaos. Stop resisting the change. Embrace it. Let go of the illusion of control and see what happens next. The game. Life's this big, twisted circus, isn't it? You try to play by the rules, you try to keep it together, and what happens? Life just laughs in your face and throws another curveball. You know the feeling? The one where you think, I've got it all figured out, only for the universe to come along and smash all your pretty little plans into pieces. The funny thing is, we all think we have some kind of control over this chaos. We walk around, heads held high, pretending that we've got the world figured out, that we know how it's supposed to go. But come on, we all know the truth, don't we? Life doesn't care about your plans, your timing, your little roadmap to success. It's gonna do what it wants, when it wants, and you're just along for the ride. But let's talk about this idea of control for a second. Isn't it adorable? We sit there trying to control every single thing in our lives, our jobs, our relationships, our future. We think we can outsmart fate with all our meticulous planning. Oh, we think we can manage it all. We gather all these pieces of the puzzle, but guess what? The puzzle's never the same. It changes shape when you blink. The moment you think you've got the edge, that's when the game shifts. And you're left sitting there wondering how you got here in the first place. So how long are you going to keep pretending? How long are you going to keep trying to fight a battle you were never meant to win? See, there's something about surrendering that's just powerful. That's when you stop pushing so hard, when you stop trying to shove things into place. You know that feeling when you finally let go of the fight and just breathe? Yeah, that's when life starts to work. But of course you don't want to hear that. No, you've got this right. You're stronger than that. You can figure it all out. Or maybe, just maybe, you can't. Maybe you're not supposed to. You see, when you keep trying to force things to happen, you're not letting life breathe. You're not letting the universe, whatever that even means, play its part. You're doing everything you can to get to the end, to cross that finish line. But have you ever stopped to think about why the race even matters? What's it all for, really? You know, there's a beauty in surrendering to the unknown. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff and just jumping. The world looks so different when you stop trying to control the descent, when you trust that there's something bigger at play. But don't get me wrong, it's terrifying. Letting go is the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's like standing in the dark and hoping that something will catch you when you fall. You don't know if they will. You don't know if you'll be okay. But guess what? It's the only way to actually find out what lies beyond all the barriers you've set up in your life. But here's the thing. You've got to get comfortable. You've got to get used to that feeling of not having a clue. You've got to get used to the unknown, because that's where growth happens. The unknown is where the magic is. Not in your plans, not in your control, but in the open space where anything can happen. You see, the more you try to grip on to what you think you know, the more you tie yourself up in knots. And when you tie yourself up in knots, you only make it harder to breathe. You only make it harder to see the opportunities that are right in front of you. The more you hold on, the more the world slips away. And let's talk about the roadblocks, shall we? Oh, the sweet little roadblocks. The ones that make you feel like you've hit a dead end, like you've reached the end of the line. You know those moments, right? When everything you've worked for falls apart, when all your efforts seem to be in vain. Yeah, we've all been there. But here's the thing you don't realize about roadblocks. They're not stopping you, they're guiding you. They're giving you a chance to change direction, to look for a new path. They're not there to crush you. They're there to help you find your way when your way doesn't seem so clear. The roadblocks are just the universe saying, not this way, not yet. There's something better waiting for you if you just trust me. And you can keep fighting them. You can keep pounding your fists against the walls that keep popping up in your life. But you're only going to exhaust yourself. You're only going to wear yourself out. It's like trying to fight the tide, trying to swim against the current. You'll never win. But when you stop fighting, when you surrender to the flow, that's when things start to shift. The doors open and everything that's been blocking you, well, it just melts away. It's like magic, right? But it's not magic, it's just the way the world works when you stop trying to control everything. So here's the real question. Are you ready to stop fighting? Are you ready to let go and trust the process? Because if you are, if you can finally step back and stop gripping so tight, that's when the world will finally start working with you, not against you. And who knows, maybe you'll end up somewhere better than you ever imagined. Roadblocks, the pesky little things. Funny how they always seem to show up right when you're on a roll. You think you've got it all figured out, right? You've got your plans, your dreams, your ambition, and then, bam! Something hits you in the face and everything falls apart. It's like the universe just can't stand to see you happy. Maybe you've felt that sting, that sudden, sharp moment when everything you worked so hard for comes crumbling down. You lose your job, your relationships crash and burn, plans you've had for years just seem to go up in smoke. It's like someone decided to throw a grenade into the middle of your life just to watch it explode. What's the point, right? You've been going through life, trying to make the best of things, and then, boom, there's the block. And what do? You bang your head against it. You scream. You cry. You curse. It feels like you're stuck in this never-ending cycle, doesn't it? But here's the thing nobody tells you. Roadblocks, they're not there to stop you. No. They're there to wake you up. They're there to remind you that you can't control everything. You can't just keep pushing and expect life to bend to your will. If it were that easy, wouldn't we all be kings and queens by now? No, roadblocks are like that slap in the face that says, hey, maybe you're going the wrong way. Maybe you're so focused on what you think you want that you don't see that there's something bigger, something better waiting for you if you just step back and look at the bigger picture. But we're stubborn, aren't we? We don't like being told no. We don't like being stopped. We push harder. We try to outsmart it. But the harder you push against a wall, the more you'll bleed when it doesn't move. It's not going anywhere. It's there for a reason. And let's talk about that reason for a second. Why do we get roadblocks? Why do we get these obstacles that seem to derail everything we've worked for? It's simple, really. Life doesn't care about your plans. Life doesn't care about what you think should happen. Life's got its own rhythm, its own timing, and you're just a small player in that grand game. You're like one little speck in the middle of an infinite universe, and you can keep kicking and screaming, but that speck isn't going to change much. The thing is, those roadblocks are there to guide you, not punish you. They're there to show you that maybe the path you're on isn't the one that's meant for you. Maybe that job you thought you needed wasn't going to bring you happiness. Maybe that person you thought was your soulmate wasn't the one who was going to help you grow. You see, sometimes life is smarter than we are. And roadblocks, they're just its way of telling you, not this way, my friend. Now I know it's hard. You've worked so hard, you poured your blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. And then some wall pops up out of nowhere, completely shattering everything. And all you can do is stare at it in disbelief, wondering why this is happening to you. But really, have you ever thought about the fact that maybe it's not happening to you, but for you? Maybe it's not about you losing. Maybe it's about you finding a new way, a way that you wouldn't have discovered if you didn't hit that roadblock. You wouldn't have learned the lesson. You wouldn't have seen the opportunity, but you can't see that right now, can you? All you see is the frustration. All you see is the blockage. All you see is the closed door. But here's the catch. Those walls, they're not permanent. They're just temporary. They might seem like they're here to stay, but everything is temporary. Everything. And those roadblocks, they're just a little bump in the road. You've faced worse, haven't you? You've been knocked down before, only to get back up again. You've been broken, only to rise stronger than before. You've been lost, only to find your way again. So why is this any different? Why should this roadblock be any different? It's just another thing you have to push through. It's another lesson you've got to learn. And trust me, you'll learn it. It's all about perspective. When you hit that wall, you can either choose to sit there and cry about it, or you can choose to step back, look at it, and find another way around. Life's full of twists and turns, dead ends and sudden detours, but the beautiful thing is, you're never really stuck. You're never out of options. You're never out of hope. But you've got to stop banging your head against the same wall and start looking for the door. Start looking for the window. Because that roadblock, it's just the universe telling you to keep going, to keep looking, to keep fighting, but not necessarily in the direction you've been going. Sometimes the detours lead you straight to the treasure. Sometimes the blocks lead you to breakthroughs. And sometimes the only thing you need to do is take a step back and stop trying to force something that wasn't meant for you in the first place. You've got this. You're stronger than the roadblocks. You've always been. Now it's time to prove it. Stress. It's like that one annoying fly buzzing around your head at the worst possible moments, isn't it? You try to swat it away, but it keeps coming back, getting closer and closer until you can't ignore it anymore. You try to focus on the important stuff. You try to push through, but all the while, there it is, buzzing away, messing with your mind, messing with your peace. You can't escape it. You can't shake it. And eventually, you just get tired of fighting it. So you give in. You give in to the chaos. You let it control your thoughts, your actions, your entire life. Your mind starts spiraling, your body starts aching, and the world around you just keeps spinning faster and faster. You're overwhelmed. You're exhausted. You don't know where to turn. And here's the kicker. Nobody tells you this. Nobody warns you. But stress, it's a beast. A nasty, ugly, monstrous beast. The more you try to control it, the more it controls you. But here's the real twist in all this, the thing they don't want you to know. The more you fight it, the worse it gets. I know, shocking, right? You think you can just power through, handle it on your own. But the truth is, you can't. No matter how hard you try, no matter how many hours you put in, no matter how many sleepless nights you spend grinding away, stress it won't be outsmarted, it won't be tamed. So why keep fighting it? Why keep battling something that doesn't play fair? Why keep throwing yourself into the lion's den and expecting to come out unscathed? It's madness, isn't it? Trying to deal with everything on your own. That's the part that gets me every time. You can't do it alone. You just can't. And yet here we are, trying to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders like it's some kind of badge of honor. We act like we're invincible, like we can handle it all, when in reality, we're crumbling under the pressure. We try to convince ourselves that if we just push a little harder, work a little longer, keep grinding, it'll all pay off in the end. But what happens when the grind never stops? What happens when you've given all you've got and it still feels like it's never enough? You end up burned out. You end up miserable, and that little fly, that constant buzz in your ear, it's not just an annoyance anymore, it becomes your reality. It takes over every aspect of your life until you're not just stressed, but drowning in it. You know what? Forget it. Forget all that noise. Forget trying to juggle everything yourself. Forget being the superhero who can handle it all. Because that's not who you are. You're human. You're not some kind of mindless machine that can go until it falls apart. You're not meant to do this alone. And that's where it gets interesting. What if I told you you don't have to deal with it? What if I told you there's a way to take the weight off your shoulders, to lift that burden and just let it go? Sounds nice, right? But it's not a magic trick. It's not some fairy tale ending. The real magic, the real trick, is in recognizing that you don't have to carry it all. You don't have to be the one who fixes everything. You don't have to be the one who saves the day. The weight you're carrying doesn't need to be yours. Now, before you start thinking I'm crazy, let's break it down. We're taught to control everything. We're taught to manage, to plan, to have a solution for every problem. And yeah, that works for a while. You can get by with that kind of mindset. You can push through, grit your teeth, and make it through the storm. But eventually you burn out. You break down. You reach a point where there's just no more you to give. So what do you do then? What do you do when you're at your limit? When you've reached the end of the line and you don't have the energy to go any further? That's the part where you've got to let go. You've got to hand over the reins. You've got to stop trying to control everything. Because here's the kicker. The universe, life, fate, whatever you want to call it, it's got its own way of making things work. You can fight it all you want, but in the end, you're just spinning your wheels, getting nowhere. Stress feeds on that. It feeds on your need to control. It thrives on it. So let go, let it go. Surrender the need to always have it all figured out. The minute you let go of that control, you'll feel the weight start to lift. It's not instant. It's not like some magic trick where you wake up and everything's fine. But it's a process, a shift. You stop being at war with the world around you. You stop thinking you're the only one who can fix, and you start to breathe. And don't get me wrong, it's not easy. It's not easy to stop running in circles, to stop trying to control every aspect of your life. You've been taught that your worth is tied to your ability to handle it all, to make things happen. But that's not true. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. The stress will never fully go away, but when you stop trying to fight it, when you stop trying to carry it all by yourself, you'll find that it doesn't have the power over you that it once did. It loses its grip. It becomes just another thing in the background, something you can manage, something you can deal with, instead of something that controls you. So stop fighting it. Stop pushing yourself into the ground. You don't need to be the hero in your own story. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. It's not yours to carry. And the more you try, the worse it gets. Let it go. It's funny, isn't it? How we constantly try to figure everything out, always chasing after answers, like they're gonna magically make the chaos in our lives disappear. We think if we just work hard enough, if we just plan well enough, if we just say the right words or make the right moves, the universe will finally hand us that golden ticket. Everything will finally fall into place, and all the stress, all the madness will just vanish. But here's the thing, life isn't a movie. There's no neat little bow at the end of every mess, no perfect resolution where everything is wrapped up, tidy and pretty. Nah, that's not how it works. Life is a mess. It's a whirlwind of confusion, pain, joy, frustration, and a million other things all mixed together. And guess what? That's okay. But we don't like it, do we? We want control. We want answers. We want the damn plan. We want the secret sauce that'll make everything perfect. But perfection? Perfection's a joke. Oh, don't get me wrong. We all love the idea of it. We all love the idea of having it all figured out. We want to believe that if we just follow the rules, if we just keep our noses clean, if we just play the game the way everyone tells us to, everything will be fine. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. You can follow all the rules, you can do everything by the book, and still, life will throw you a curveball. It's like trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces are missing. No matter how hard you try, you can't put it all together. But you keep at it, don't you? You keep trying to force the pieces to fit. You keep banging your head against the wall, thinking that if you just try a little harder, if you just keep pushing, it'll all make sense in the end. But here's the truth. There is no end. There is no finish line. There's just life, always changing, always shifting, always unpredictable. And that's terrifying, right? Because if there's no end, if there's no final destination, then where are we even going? What's the point? Oh, but here's where it gets good. The point? The point isn't about getting to the end. The point isn't about figuring it all out. The point is about learning to roll with it. The point is about realizing that you don't need all the answers. You don't need the perfect plan. You don't need to control everything, because guess what? You never really could. You thought you could. You thought you had it all under control. But that's the thing about life. It has a funny way of showing you who's really in charge. And newsflash, it's not you. It's never been you. But that's okay. In fact, it's better this way, because when you finally let go of the idea that you need to control every little thing, that's when you start to feel free. That's when you stop worrying about what's going to happen next, because you realize that the universe, or whatever it is, has a plan, even if you can't see it yet. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to solve every problem. The world doesn't need you to carry it all. But you, my friend, you've been walking around with that burden, thinking you could handle it all, thinking that if you just worked harder, tried more, you'd finally reach that point where everything makes sense. But that point, that perfect moment, it doesn't exist. There's no magical place where all the pieces fit, where everything makes sense. That's the lie we've been sold. And here's the punchline. You don't need it. You don't need all the answers. You don't need everything to be perfect. Perfection is overrated. Stressing over the details, trying to plan every single step, chasing the illusion of control, it only keeps you stuck. It keeps you trapped in this endless loop of trying and failing and trying again. That the real freedom comes from stepping outside of that loop. You can't control life, but you don't have to. Because when you let go of that need for control, when you stop forcing things into place, that's when you start living. That's when you start feeling that weight lift off your shoulders. It's not easy. No. It's not easy to stop being the hero, to stop being the one who's always trying to fix everything, to stop pretending like you have all the answers. But it's worth it, because once you start letting go, once you start trusting the process, that's when the magic happens. You see, stress isn't just about all the things you have to do, it's about the things you think you have to do, the things you think you should do. It's about that constant pressure to be perfect, to be in control. But once you realize that you don't have to carry that weight, that you don't have to solve every problem, that's when you get to be free. And that, my friend, is the real blessing. Because life, chaotic and unpredictable as it is, becomes something to embrace. Something to flow with, not something to fight against. So stop trying to fit the pieces together. Stop pretending like you have to have it all figured out. Stop stressing over what's out of your hands, because you never had control anyway, and that's okay.